We are talking about black male aggression. Is there a tipping point for black male aggression? Um, you guys know some of the things I might be covering deep down, but we'll see. Let's think about it. But what is the first fight you remember seeing? Real life fight. So maybe it was at school, maybe it was at home, maybe it was in the neighborhood. What was your first fight that you remember seeing? While you all are coming up with that, I'm going to tell you mine. So, now, I've said this before, originally from New York. And so when we moved to Arizona, it was a big cultural shock. And so, to help you understand, I have an older brother. My brother is an extrovert. I am a very serious introvert. Me being an introvert does not mean I'm not social or that it doesn't mean I can't be a social butterfly, but it really does mean that that social butterflyness will work for a little bit and then you'll see me in a corner somewhere passed out and I'm done. So I have great social skills, but I do like to be to myself. So I'm gonna tell you my first fight because I cannot forget. Magita says you really can't remember. I can't forget. All right. Um, oh, hold on here. Kayla has one. The first fight I can remember seeing was between my brothers. They were really just rolling around. We were all young children, but that was the first physical fight I saw in person. All right, I love it. So for me, I'm not going to count like, the play fighting and all of that because I never really saw that as, we watched wrestling, so we kind of knew certain things weren't real. But I'm talking about pissed off, real fight. Okay. So it's everyone saying can't remember either. I love this. I love that you guys can't because I can remember very clearly. All right. So mine, at least, the first one I saw. So we moved from New York to Arizona. And it was a big cultural shock for me, especially because I was used to being in school with people who only look like me. Um, that's what I was used to, plain and simple. And so coming to Arizona, it was a cultural shock. It was like a shift that I couldn't understand. And then on top of that, you have to realize also, I was kind of tall. I was not tall. I was kind of small, tiny. And I always had older, like black girls looking out for me. So I always lived a different kind of life. You know what I mean? Different perspective. So when I came here, none of that was here. It was like kind of bare. No one looked like me. Culturally, it was totally different, just from all levels, all areas. You couldn't even find your favorite chips. It was just different. And my instinct was to be more introverted. You find someone you get along with and so on and so forth. But my brother was an extrovert. He liked being the cool kid in class. He liked everyone knowing him. He liked all of that, into sports and athletics and all of that kind of thing, right? But the thing about him is that he did have a few things I guess you could make fun of. He had these ears, that kind of were pronounced. You can see here, you can barely see my ears, but his don't do that. They kind of mine. It's not even comfortable for me to do that, but they would come out. He's grown into them, and he's actually a model now, so he's fine now. But at that time, it was really hard. And then his name also, you could change it and make it rhyme with the word gay. So when we got there, he of course wanted to be friends with all these neighborhood kids. And so he's out there trying to be Mr. Social. But these kids were mean. They might have been a little racist. They might have been a little bit of just exclusionary, like they wanted to exclude someone. They weren't welcoming to new people. Ashton Ether's in the house, by the way. Um, and so they were mean. Now, I remember they were taunting him. Now, it wasn't just one day of taunting, it had built up, right? First, it was a name calling, they make fun of the ears, Dumbo, those kinds of things. And it would just happen every once in a while. Then it'd be like little questions, all kinds of stuff that, was slowly taunt. So it was like this neighborhood fiasco of bullying, but it was kind of quiet, and they only did it in groups because I think there's still a fear of a black boy, you know what I mean? So they would do it in groups and it would happen, but I was always like, you have to realize I was much smaller. And so I really didn't have, you weren't going to see me do anything in regards to any of this, right? I'd go away, I'd be on my bike and I'd go somewhere else. I'd go into the house and play with rocks and I was happy. Okay. So, but one day I had noticed it. It was like a weekend. I remember that much. It was a Saturday and it was a Sunday. It was a Sunday. It was a Sunday. All the kids had been out. Everyone was playing and they start taunting him. Now, I was on my bicycle that day, and so therefore I was kind of in and out, but they started taunting him and almost like following him around. And finally they got to the house. He actually started to go towards our house, and in that they kept on taunting and taunting. And one of the girls, and they were calling him names, all that kind of stuff, rhyming his name with, the word gay. And then eventually what happened was one of the girls who had an older brother, who was in that group of kids, she started to throw rocks at him. So that part was really where it was kind of over, right? She took rocks from our front yard and started throwing them at him. Now this guy just wants to be friends with everybody, just wants to be accepted. And what happened is that he snapped, the tipping point. And this is what we're talking about, the tipping point. He snapped. And when he snapped, he went to her older brother, so he chose someone, and they might have said things. I don't know all the things they said, because I remember mostly the rocks, and I knew that something was in front of our own front yard. I knew the rocks. I knew that something was happening. So I was ready to act in the sense of, I'm about to tell mom. Okay, that was where I was prepared for. I got to tell mom. What am I going to do? I got to tell mom. That's all I knew to do. So I remember getting off my bike and looking around, and I was like, oh shoot. Well, my brother snapped, got the older brother, and beat the boy up on top of those rocks in the front yard. They weren't ready for that. And the thing is that he didn't just beat him up. He had to be pulled off. Because I saw it. I was like, ooh, this isn't stopping. So then I ran. That was the first. So I ran inside the house, called my mom. Mom. Fights happening. She comes out and she's screaming his name. And he's not stopping. It was so much. It was a buildup, because you realize it wasn't just that day. It was a buildup of them doing this. And so he's not stopping. She pulls him off finally, and brings him into the house. I come into the house. The kids are shocked. And they all go home, kind of like, go home, like, get out of here. They all go home, and that was it. That was the end of the day. It wasn't, it wasn't like he got into trouble or anything. It was just like, what happened? Okay. All right, come on inside. That was the end of it, After that, my brother, of course, it was fine. No one bothered him anymore. I think they realized that, we probably shouldn't do that. So they stopped. All the bullying stopped. I didn't talk to those people because I am a loyal person. I'm like, I don't care if you want. I'm like, I was shocked because he still tried to be friends with them. But my ideas, I'm like, hold on. You do that, we ain't cool. We ain't never cool. So I was never cool with those people after that. I paid attention to all. I looked at everyone in that group, and whoever was in that group, I don't know. And my brother probably still remembers these people. He probably knows their first and last name, because that's kind of how he is. He could probably tell you more about that day in detail in very disturbing ways. But I remember that much detail at least, and I don't remember not one of their names, nan one. I don't remember them, because that's just how I am. So, with that being said, that was my first fight. Now, me telling you my first fight is going to help you realize what my reaction has been to a lot of what has been going on out there. I recognize, I guess, from a very young age, that there is a tipping point, right? That you can push someone, and eventually they're going to break. But the difference between my brother and I is that he wanted that group. He wanted that inclusion. He's an extrovert. He wanted to be friends with these people. So this was his way, because the moment after he did that, he was still friends with those people. Everything went on. For me, I was like, we're done here, aren't we? We're done here. Can you, that was my mentality. So I was done. He wasn't. He continued friendships with them. And so that's where we're at here. This is my background. Now I want to go to the fight that I think Musank, I don't know who said it. I saw one. Oh, Risha. Here we go. Yes. This Musank said, I think it was third grade was my best friend fought someone, but I don't remember the cause of it. All right. So that was third grade. I don't remember what grade I was in at that time. I just know I was small. And then wrestling, boxing in person, it was two females, rather not say who, woke me up out of my sleep. I was about 4, I think. Ooh, geez Louise. Right. So for me, that was my first one. And I guess what was interesting to me was I saw the buildup. I knew what was happening. So now let's get into the topic. right? I am going to talk about Will Smith. I'm going to talk about Mike Tyson. I'm going to talk about just the history of respectability politics that I think we've noticed within the Black community in general. I'm going to talk about it. So let's talk about it here. First, I'm going to read to you some quotes from the book Malcolm Gladwell. And the reason what really inspired this video was waking up and seeing that Mike Tyson hit a guy on the plane and seeing the actual video of him doing his thing on this plane. When I saw that, I realized, hold up, there's something happening here, and I think we should talk about it. And so we're talking about it right now. Okay. And of course, so let's talk about this here. Here are the quotes. And this is from Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, How Little Things Can Make a Big Difference. So the tipping point is that magic moment when an idea, trend, or social behavior crosses a threshold, tips, and spreads like wildfire. And I'm wondering, are we starting to see a tipping point for built up aggression that Black men are finally expressing beyond entertainment or sports? Okay? Because so far, one thing we've learned is that it's okay for a Black male to express his aggression, one, against his own people, right? And sometimes in a domestic place, in a domestic space. And we're not talking about that today. So I just want to kind of like throw it out there and then say, yeah, we're not dealing with that. It's okay, but it's not okay for a Black male to express their aggression any other way, right? Then they must be detained and they must be in some kind of place put away. But we're seeing something different. But prior to this, the only time we've been okay with Black male aggression, if it's for the entertainment for the masses, or through sports, right? So if you're going to be aggressive, it has to be in a movie, in an entertaining way, or we're going to do it through sports, and that's okay, right? As long as there's an acting aspect to it. So the tipping point by Malcolm Gladwell talks about what a tipping point is in general, right? And so it made me think about what we've been seeing in mass, like on a mass level, meaning the mass public, the world are seeing certain actions expressing Black male aggression. And each time the people have been pushed to a certain point. So let's go to this one. Emotion is contagious. This is Malcolm Gladwell. If you want to bring a fundamental change into people's belief and behavior, you need to create a community around them where those new beliefs can be practiced and expressed and nurtured. Well, we have the internet now. So you have videos that can be played over and over and over again. We've been talking about it. It's been nurtured. Everyone's saying they didn't want to talk about it, but I'm like, hold on. Us talking about it and nurturing a certain behavior over and over and over again, and people getting emotionally wrapped up in this has been contributing to, I feel, could we see a tipping point in the way aggression is being expressed? Then we talk about, we've been used to the word pandemic, but an epidemic is essentially the spread of something, right? Spread of a disease, but it's the spread of something here that happens pretty fast. This is the paradox of the epidemic, that in order to create one contagious movement, you often have to create many small movements first. What are small movements? TikTok videos, Instagram videos, videos that can be repeated over and over and over and over again, the same little clip that can be shown over and over and over again. I mean, through music, through everything, over and over and over again. And I'm wondering, is this something that's happening? So I want to talk about what I was noticing and what made me think about this. So just from a visual perspective. Now, my first instinct, if you all are wondering, when it came down to the slap, I noticed that there was two cultural responses. For the most part, for especially Black people who probably really aren't caught up into respectability politics, no one really cared about the first slap. We didn't really care. I don't know. Maybe y'all care, but I didn't really care. And mostly because we've seen something like that before. And we also have an understanding of like, yeah, if you mess around too much, that might happen. Not saying that was right or wrong, but it wasn't jarring. But when I realized, I had to take a step back, right? Because that's coming from my own insular cultural experience. But that's not what was really happening. You're talking about a world stage, and you're talking about it was happening in a place where it's dominated by a culture that does not look like me, right? So it's dominated by a culture that does not look like me. It's a place where people have fought to be accepted, right? And that's been the big thing. But my whole thing is the entryway to being accepted finally was through one, a black male playing the role of a black aggressive man, or a black woman who played the role of deprived single mom, over sexualized, poor, who is now begging for someone to make her feel good. So there were two really interesting stereotypes and disturbing characters of blackness that got awarded at this award show, right? And so now you have Will Smith, who's been from there probably been fighting to be awarded for something, I guess, with a different depiction that really is a display of acting. So he'd been fighting for that, so much so that at one point he decided that he was going to boycott it because he didn't feel, him and his wife decided they were going to boycott it. Well, who was the comedian there who was still being accepted and still being a part of the culture and making fun of that boycott? Well, you guys know who it was. It's the guy who got slapped. He got slapped eventually for it. I mean, not for that, but for something else. But he was making fun of these two people who had boycotted the Oscars, and it was a joke for him, right? It was a joke. So that's what happened there. So there's a buildup. There's this buildup of a tipping point. Then we go forward and we go to this pandemic year, years. And you're talking about a couple who have been bullied and taunted. So Will Smith and Jada, they've been bullied and taunted over the internet throughout the pandemic. Yes, Will Smith's been making amazing strides and they keep on going. They're doing stuff, and Jada's doing amazing things with the Red Table Talk. But online, there was a lot of bullying happening, especially on Jada's side. So much so that she shut down her Instagram where you can't even comment on it, where they could before. So this was a buildup. It kept on happening. And so it's interesting to me that the buildup happened. And then finally, one night on the world stage where we all could see it in a place that it's not supposed to happen, right? This is something that within our community, we would have accepted at a barbecue. We would have accepted this at a any kind of more insular or quiet event, but not on this kind of stage, not in front of white people. That's not something we ever expected, but it happened. But the action in itself really wasn't that shocking. It was where it happened, right? And then trying to figure out why it happened. But to me, clearly, wouldn't we agree that there probably was a tipping point? There was a tipping point within the person that so much happened, build up. And then finally, it was just that one thing. And it could have been anything in many ways, but it was that one thing that finally said, okay, it's a wrap. It reminds me of my brother. It reminds me of my brother where, the taunting was going on and on and on and on. All he wanted to do was be accepted by these people. All he wanted to do was be friends with them. And it kept on happening, taunting. Finally, he was close to home, close to safety. And I think that being so close to home, close to safety, it was just like, if I don't do something, it's going to keep going. And I guess he said it's got to stop. And that's what happened. Now, when we look at the other situation, was it kind of like that? We're on a world stage, the most important stage. Was there this moment of, if I don't do something, it's going to keep going? And he's got to make it stop. The difference is that you're talking about from a child to a man. I heard some people say that the behavior that Will had was very childish, but it really wasn't. I'm saying it wasn't, for my opinion, because it was very controlled, right? My brother had to literally be pulled off of this kid. My mom had to pull him off. Will Smith did not have to be pulled off of anyone. He walked up, very controlled, bam, came back, said his words. He was done. Washed his hands. Let's go to Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, controlled, waited for this water ball to hit his head, and then he got up and then sat down. Now, we all know that Michael Tyson's hands are a lethal weapon. Mike Tyson knew what he could do and what he didn't need to do. He literally, to me, in my opinion, it was almost like when you see a cat play with a little bit of yarn. That was about as much damage as he did. He could have done way more. They're lethal weapons. There's so much more that he could have done. He didn't. It was full control. He did something real fast, got up, and then he left. So there's this level of control that we're seeing here with black male aggression. So it's not wild. It's not it's not this uncontrolled thing. If you think about how the two depictions that we've seen, where in movies, where you have Training Day, where it's just that wild, shootout, and then we also have Django Unchained, where we know what happened in Django Unchained, but that was one of the few times you got to see the tipping point in a cinematic place. But the interesting thing about it, and I think Nat Turner as well, but you get to see this tipping point. But the problem within all of that is that it's a movie. It's not real. Now all of a sudden we have now stepped away from movies and entertainment, and we're seeing this in real life. And so then my question is, and so for some of the Black men here, is something happening? Is there a tipping point for Black male aggression that we are starting to see? Are we starting to see that more and more that Black men are not caring about respectability politics? And what does that really mean? Are we saying that there is this release of trying to be in control? So I want to go to kind of the history here, and we did a little bit of research. We were talking a lot about this. And we did a lot of research and just thinking about different things that, okay, historically, who's done a lot of this stuff. So there was a book by, let me look at the author, Rebecca Hall, and the book is called Wake, The Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Revolts. And so that essentially a lot of what we were seeing is that this is a book about how Black female warriors have been in the main ringleaders in slave rebellions. And so when they went and look up old burial grounds, they were female bodies that we were finding, like warriors though, who were doing the fights. And you have the history of the Dahomey, right, and Benin, who led those wars. So they were warriors. And then of course we have the fictional depiction of the Dora Milaje from Wakanda. So we have this history of Black women who have been fighting, and we have Harriet Tubman, that we know that women have often been, in our history, the warriors, the fighters, because we could, right? Because you'd be the one that was the people least expected. Right? You weren't expecting a woman to do this. And so therefore, in our fight to win, in our fight to grow, in our fight to try to seek justice, Black women have often been in the forefront, right? And then Black men, in many ways, have been forced to kind of shut down and be quiet and kind of feel a little bit oppressed. Well, not a little bit, extremely oppressed. And that in order to try to find a way to build up and find power in our society, it was trying to do it through education, through composure, through essentially not falling into a stereotype that might make them seem beastly, uncontrolled, or animal-like, right? And that when you could express your aggression, it had to be done now in a way that, hey, we'll pay you millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to show off your prowess, to show off your strength, to show off all of your things. Just as long as you don't direct it to us, we'll pay you, right? You entertain us, we'll pay you for that. But when it comes down to justice and expressing the justice, and we know the other side of it, and that's where the Black Lives Matter movement has come into play, and seeing constant aggression and assault from police officers to Black men. So there's been a big message that you can entertain us, but you can't use that aggression for anything else. That's what it's been. But now we're seeing something different. We're seeing Will Smith being able to get up, whether people are upset or not. He went up and slapped, Chris Rock. Then we see Mike Tyson, who was being taunted. Mike Tyson was being taunted and taunted and taunted. I saw the video. Eventually, finally, when something came his way, bam, he got up and he acted. It's not like these men were out there just waiting for, just being the aggressors. This really has come in a bit of a self-defense like mode, right? Aggression that I think has been suppressed. So my question is that, are we finally seeing a tipping point? Because I think that when it was easy to see the Will Smith situation as a one-off, then it was kind of like, okay, fine. And then you have to realize there's also this idea that he was hitting another Black male. But in my mind, if you look at it from a symbolic stance, he wasn't just hitting another Black male. He was hitting a Black male who has been upholding respectability politics, right? Who has been willing to be on that side for so long, who's been willing to be the joke, right? He sat with a group of, white comedians and essentially goaded them and encouraged them to say the N word with the hard ER. That's recorded. He is the other one that created a whole, thing about the difference between a black person and the N word again. So he has, this is part of his comedy and what he's developed, right? And he's proud of. This is part of his career. So it's interesting to me that that's who he slapped. It wasn't just anyone. It was that person, which is different than what we have noticed when we think about black on black crime, right? Um, and so I'll get to comments later, but I think that it's interesting that he went up and that's where the aggression came out, right? And so then we go to, and I will get to comments so we can address them right before I finish speaking. Then we go to Mike Tyson, who was being pushed, and this time I remember. I mean, for me, it was a bit of a shock because now he was being goaded by someone who I think would thought they could do it. They probably were a little inebriated, but they thought that there was some level of protection. And I think deep down, this guy wanted to be hit by Mike Tyson, right? But it happened. Something that I don't think we ever would have thought happened. Mike Tyson has been a boxer forever, and when have you expected that to happen on an airplane, to get up and for him to actually use his aggression? And which was more disturbing to me is that in both instances how controlled it was. It wasn't just wild and free. It was very, very controlled. And I think that for sure, it to me is what stands out the most, because we're not looking at just wild aggression. We're looking at aggression that almost seems thought out, that seems meditated, like you've probably played this out so many different times, that it's been sitting there and now there's a tipping point happening here. And if you look at it symbolically, whether if you think Will Smith was defending his wife, which is, to me, I'm with it. If you think that he was defending, if he was against all of it, just the horribleness of the joke, it was very specific that what triggered him. But I feel like that was the tipping point, but there was a buildup, right? There might have been something else that would have gotten it, but that was that one thing that was like, okay, this is it. I could take this. And now this one, that particular joke, that was the thing that said boom, and created it. Just like Mike Tyson he could take this, and then that little dink on his head, bam, tipping point. So what's interesting, but in those responses each time, they were controlled. They were very controlled. No one had to pull Will Smith off of Chris Rock. He didn't. Walked up, bam, went down. That's it, right? Mike Tyson, no one had to pull Mike Tyson off. It was boom, got up, left, and got off the airplane after that. So it's interesting to me that that's happening. And I'm wondering, are we going to see more of these instances? And what does that mean? Does this, what does that mean for our culture? What does it mean? And I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think that there's something happening. There is something that is happening, and that's why I want to talk about it. This, to me, is more of an open conversation, so I want to know everyone's thoughts. So therefore, I'm done talking. I'm going to look at the comments and see what we have so far. All right, so let's see. I'm going to go back as far as I can until towards the beginning. So, actually, either raise your hand if you were hurt by that first laugh. That's a good question. There's always layers. Let's see. I don't see any hands up. So no hands followed from there. Okay. Okay, so black women, when broken down, do tend to fight back. Guys seem to get broken down on another level, degraded. I agree. I always thought, what will they do when our men start fighting back physically? Thank you, Larisha. And that's kind of my question here as well. Black women at this point have been known, right? We've had this history. We have this history of fighting back, whether we've been told over and over again about Harriet Tubman and all that. And of course, we know about Nat Turner, but you know what I'm saying? There's this history that we have it's okay. We're known to fight back. We're known to be all of that. We're black women. Exactly. Black men have been degraded, emasculated. That's what Will Smith was going through over and over and over again, right? So for him to get up and defend his wife, who eventually said, well, I don't need it, but you may not need it, but he needed to do it. And that's what's so impressive. I mean, impressive in the sense of like, it's really, there's an impression that has been put on me of like what is happening, right? I can't forget what's happening, because even if you say you don't need to, he needed to, right? He needed to do that. And so what an interesting need to have, where we maybe haven't seen that need expressed prior to, right? Now, Ola Sumba says, nope, a slap is in no way the same as a mass murder or genocide, and history has shown who has caused the majority of that. Maybe Will Smith was showing out for his wife and it backfired. Very good topic. Yeah. No, it's not at all. But we're starting to see a little moment. No, I fully agree. We're on the same page there. I think that is what he was doing. I don't know if he was showing out for his wife or trying to impress her. I think that there was a tipping point. And he had gone through a lot. You have to, for me, I actually do watch the Red Table Talk, and I do pay attention to what they've done and what they've said publicly together. So I'm aware of it, and all of it has always made sense to me, even in their weird coded language. What I realize is that it hasn't made sense to a whole lot of other people for some reason. It's like mysterious to them to hear this couple, talk about having an open marriage or trying to figure that out. Like that's not something humans can't do. Like, or people who look like us, we can't have these questions about who we are and how to figure it out, even amongst ourselves, which is really bizarre. But I've seen them evolve. I've seen them have these questions. So good. We keep on asking that. What happens when Black men fight back and when they are actually supported in their ability to fight back? Exactly. Because that's the thing. There's a level of support that is happening now, right? Because before that, it's all about being afraid. But what happens? Thank you, Ashanether. And then what is it about the control versus the uncontrolled outburst that is so much more intense? And I've been worried, that's what stood out to me. That's what made me wake up and be like, whoa, what's happening? Because these are controlled incidents, right? They are not just wild and free. It's almost like this has all been, there's a level of maybe rehearsed. And I'm not talking about like it's all fake, it's all a show, but more of, I can't imagine being taunted and taunted for so long and not in your mind not being ready. I mean, how many times have you been pissed off and you've rehearsed the argument, right? How many times have we been you know, uh going through something and in your mind you already work it out in your head? So do you really think that you can degrade a group of people over and over and over again? You really think that, especially for Will Smith, he played a role of a man who was a protector, a hardcore protector? Now everyone's going to have criticisms of the actual man himself, but one thing we know for sure is that he worked really hard to protect his girls, right? He was very vigilant about how they went out there, who interacted with them, how long they could interact with them, and the ways that they were going to interact with them to push them to being great, right? So that was the role, that was who he played. And when you play a role like that, and as an actor, you study that role, you become that role, you study the tapes, you study the language, and you create a relationship with this person, and that's what he did. So if you think about the relationship that Will Smith had to create with the character of King Richard in that sense, then you were Richard Williams, then you have to realize he also probably had a fundamental shift within himself on a spiritual level that made him think differently about the way he functions. And so on a night that he's being honored for that, and that a woman around him is not being honored, right in front of his face, and she has responded as such, it says to me that something snapped. That was his point. But how many times had he rehearsed that, right? And then you also have to remember this, if you think about it from a another way, he played the role of a man who was getting beat up over and over and over again. If you haven't seen King Richard, it was actually a great film. But we get to see where he was getting beat up by the neighborhood people, almost to the point that drove him to the point where he had a gun and he was getting ready to do something. And luckily he didn't, but he was getting beat up. This was someone who was used to getting beat up. And that was the story of King Richard Williams. He was a man who was getting beat up, and he built himself up enough to make his girls these powerful women. Can you imagine what it's like to play that role and embody that role all within you, head to toe, inside and out, in order to deliver an Oscar-worthy performance, right? Which I think we didn't need Oscars to validate his performance. I thought that was a great film. But to play that kind of role and then think it's not going to affect you at all in your personal life, and it's not going to affect you in a place like this where all of a sudden now on the world stage, you remember, he played the role of a man who had daughters on the world stage, and who also was on the world stage and had to react, and had all kinds of controversy and criticism that was piled on him. So now he's on his world stage. He is where he was, right? Because the Oscars and any kind of award, that's his world stage. That's where he plays. And this is what happened. He acted. And I get that people don't like it and all that kind of stuff, and people have all kinds of feelings, and I understand. I totally do. Whatever, do you feel your feelings? I'm just saying, I get, when I see what happened, it just makes me think deeper about a tipping point that maybe we've been ignoring, that maybe we haven't been paying attention to, that we don't want to acknowledge that this is the possibility. This might be where we're headed. And for it to have these instances happen in a short period of time, I'm just wondering, will we see more? And what does it really mean? All right. So that's it. I'm going to just end it there because I don't feel like I need to, I mean, I'm like, are we seeing the beginning of an inevitable shift? Is this a shift that was always going to happen? Right? And so I'm just going to read this. We got our moment of skepticism to end. And you guys throw in your comments and give me your feedback. And for those of you guys who are watching later, what do you think? I mean, I know we're all going to have different opinions. Of course not. And you're going to probably bring up something I wasn't even thinking about, but that's the point of a conversation. So please do so. But are Black men really more dominant or aggressive than men of other races? So that's our moment of skepticism. Because I mean, that's the other thing. Like, are we looking at, are we seeing something that can only happen because of race, right? So many layers, from clandestine efforts to cause animosity between Black men and women. Black women recently divesting from a Black man whose murderer got off due to white supremacy. Funny times. I agree. Yes, I agree. Because there is that level of divestment too. But remember, when you think about the Will and Jada of it all, that is a symbol of Black love, right? And that's something that, which is why a lot of people, especially in the community, didn't have an issue with it, because they felt, you're defending her. And when do we see a Black woman defended? I don't want to leave that point out. We saw a Black woman defended. Whether she wanted that defense or not, I really don't care. I saw it with my own eyes, and you guys saw it too. And it's something that I can never forget. I can never forget that she looked that way, and he said, "Oh, hell no," and did it in a very controlled way. As a woman, I'm always going to think in a certain kind of way that I only tell my friends and family what I think about that. But you can guess, you can figure it out, as a woman, of what that might mean if someone sees pain and hurt in my eyes and they respond. We all have a different feeling what we would want. But we get it. He's on the world stage. We all know, yes, I feel bad for Chris Rock as far as the humiliation goes and all of that. But I also know that, what happened. That's kind of where I'm at when it comes to that. But at the same time, we're seeing something that I don't think we've seen before. So if I leave all the morality out of it, who's right, who's wrong, and all of that, we are seeing something that is only becoming more refined in our viewership of it. And I think that's what I mean. If Will Smith was the beginning of it, and then we have Mike Tyson at this point, what happens next? Right? Because Mike Tyson's one we all could stand by. I realized that there, all of a sudden, when I was looking at the comments in comparison, everyone was really able to stand. It's to stand by a Black woman being defended on a public stage. Is this new for us? Hell yeah, it's new for us. I don't know, maybe it's not new for y'all. Hell yeah, it's new. That's why, to me, don't ask me how I feel about it. I'm still trying to process that. I'm still trying to process that. I witnessed it. So, all right. So, back to moment of skepticism. Are Black men really more dominant, aggressive than men of other races? My answer is no. I really don't think so. Thank you, Mingitas. No. I think that Black men have had more to deal with, and I feel like there really is a buildup here that we don't really understand or can comprehend. I think there's a buildup that is so strong that we just don't seem to understand what it looks like and what that will mean. Musang says, I don't think so. We just don't get overlooked or excuses for it. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't I think that there is, the more you have to deal, the more you have to deal with, the more power may be behind it, right? But I think that when you are not paying attention to someone, you think you can keep on goading, eventually something will happen. And when that happens, it's going to show. I mean, I can go to one thing I noticed in Korea was that, Koreans have dealt with a lot of oppression and a lot of especially the men, right? We know that Asian men deal with a lot when it comes to masculinity and all of that, and those men could be pretty rough and pretty mean. And I wonder why were they that way? What was that coming from? And so when I think about it, I'm like, no, I don't think they are at all. I think that you are seeing people who have been oppressed. You're seeing people who have told, you can't do this. We've seen that it's been defined, and we've also seen this with Asian men as well, where Asian men can be aggressive and all that as long as they're doing some kind of martial arts. If you're doing some kind of martial arts, then it's okay, right? But you can't do it in any other place. And then for Black men, if you are doing some kind of sport or wrestling or something like that, then it's okay, but you can't do it in any other place. I think what you're finding out is that, well, we may something may happen, but it's not like there is more dominance or aggression. I just think that there's more oppression. Okay, so that's where we're at. That's my opinion of all that. Let's do a card for the week and let's skedaddle. But you guys put your comments in. Please let me know what you think about what I've said today. Do you see what I'm seeing? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? I just had to talk about it so much. We were going to do a totally different video, by the way. But when I saw that, I just couldn't. I think I woke up and I was like, I'm sitting there talking with the crew, and I was like, listen, what do you think about this? I can't get this out of my head. I can't not. And so we were going to maybe do it later, a different time, but the time was nigh. It had to happen now. So thumbs up if you like this conversation. Please comment. I want to know what you all think. And I'm going to do the energy for the week for everyone here. So this is the energy for the week, and these are the contributing factors. So here we go. That's the truth. The energy for the week is baby, you need a hug. And then wait till I can't wait no more is the contributing factors. So this is essentially what this video is about, and that is what we need. So I'm glad that the cards brought this to the forefront. We need to love, and we need to have some compassion for each other. Baby, you need a hug. That's what that means. It is time for compassion. It's time for love. It's a time for understanding, which is why I wore my shirt today. I made a TikTok. I made a TikTok the other day, and it talked about making sure that, especially Black men, that you are opening up with your friends and being compassionate towards your friends and being able to do the same thing for yourself. Like, you need to have friends that you can cry with. Black men, you need to cry with each other. You need to be vulnerable with each other, and complain and gripe and do all those things together, because I think it's really, really important at this point. One of the most beautiful things that I think that I noticed during the Oscar situation was that the moment that happened, you saw men rush up to Will to be there, and I'm pretty sure that men rushed up to Chris Rock as well. But what was important is that there was a support system, and maybe that part wasn't exciting for everyone else, but it was for me, and I would love to see more of that happen. And wait till you can't wait no more, the contributing factors of needing that compassion. And wait till you can't wait no more. That particular card talks about the buildup of passion, the buildup of something. And so once that happens, this card talks essentially about the tipping point. I love these cards. I really do. It talks about the buildup of the tipping point, and that essentially from there you need healing. So if we start to see this shift, we understand exactly what it means. There's been a buildup, but let's make sure we're supporting and offering that compassion as it happens, because there's a reason for it. It's not isolated, it's not made up, it's not inappropriate. There's a reason for it, and if we can address the reason, I think that we'll have a better understanding. I think that we can't react the way other people react. When I say we, people of color who look like us, we cannot react in the same way. All this canceling and all that, we cannot do that. We have to seek to understand. We have to seek to reach out, because we know deep down why things happen. We all know. That's the thing. That's the thing. I think that I wasn't shocked because I know. I'm like, there was nothing surprising about this. The only thing that was surprising is that what we have known amongst us culturally all of a sudden was now in a place that we didn't expect it to be. But that was it. And it's pretty powerful that it was there. It was very powerful because that tells me that there is this sense of hiding, this sense of maybe shame, this sense of let's try to get along, or in a way that let's look good to people. Let's have this sense of, oh, we're respectable. All of that got thrown out the window. And that to me was a bit of a relief. And when I saw the Mike Tyson video, once again, I had a bit of a relief. It's just this feeling of, yeah, throw it out the window. You know, how long are we supposed to take a whole bunch of BS? How long? And it's amazing to see that men, black men, are starting to break out a bit more, because black women have always been able to fight and be wild and rowdy and all of that kind of thing. And we just have to deal with, the sassy black woman. We're seeing something different. So, all right, Mingita is thrown out. Watch them culture appropriate this one also. They do it all the time. I think one thing I've learned is from watching YouTube videos with my nephew. They're wild. They're out there wild and doing some wild stuff. Y'all, whoa, whoa, whoa. There's a world out there that, oh my goodness. To me, we're on something else here. So we'll see. We shouldn't have to sambo no more. Yep, all the coons and all the people doing the shucking and jiving. To me, that was what we started to see. Like, there's something amongst us. It's like, yeah, we're not into that anymore. It's not. It's just over. We're regular people. It's over. So, Straight Panther says, I think it's a long time coming. Exactly. So we'll see what happens. And one thing for sure is that it's pretty well controlled. So we're seeing a certain level of refinement. What does that refinement look like? All right, you all. Thank you for rocking with me today. Hallelujah, hallelujah, magic. I will see you all. And like I said, if you haven't subscribed to Ash and Ether, go over there and subscribe. More videos like this will be over there. And of course, continue to support this channel and like, comment, do all the things that we need to do. And we're going to keep on growing and keep on moving. Follow me on pretty much all the social media platforms, or on Kiki Cinza, but we also do have Ash and Ether over on Instagram that we're slowly building. So the more you follow over there, find Ash and Ether. We could do stuff and grow. All right. Bye. You're welcome.